Hey, I want to talk a bit about the situation in Hong Kong because it's once again a very pivotal moment in the territory's modern history. I think this is basically the most important development since the umbrella protests of 2014, possibly even since 1997. So I'm going to read out the article. This is from the Eye. There's quite a poignant photograph there. See the two police officers watching this protester. Okay, Hong Kong leader presses on with extradition law after mass protests. This report is by Christopher Bodine in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's leader says she will push ahead with legislation that allows citizens to be extradited from semi-autonomous territories in mainland China despite rising anger. Um, I'm not going to read out the whole report. So basically, this is a law that Chief Executive Carrie Lam has agreed to, whereby suspects in Hong Kong will be sent to the mainland. Now, this is a direct contradiction of the one party, two systems agreement as signed by the Sino British Joint Declaration of 1984. It's very obvious that the CCP regime has been eroding that ever since, but this is a particularly glaring example of it. You know, it started with these attempts to try and bring communist ideology into the education system. Um, Hong Kong is so very important because what the CCP want to do, they want to totally disregard one country, two systems, despite what they say. I think that's obvious. They want Hong Kong to be another mainland city, just like Wuhan or Nanjing or Changchun or Jingzhou or any other mainland city that is under communist control. Um, this is a very serious situation. I'll go on to read parts of the report. I'm not reading it all out because it's a little bit long, but our Foreign Office Minister Mark Field said Britain feared a chilling effect on Hong Kong's rights and freedoms if the extradition laws were approved. He told MPs the UK remains acutely aware of its responsibility towards Hong Kong as one of the signatories of the 1984 Joint Declaration. I really think the time has come that we need to seriously consider not just being vocal towards China, but sending out a strong message, giving them an ultimatum, something along the lines of if they don't if they don't start respecting some basic freedoms, at least regarding Hong Kong, if they're not going to do it on the mainland, then I really think we would be justified in recalling the Chinese ambassador. I mean, look at the track record. They're incarcerating millions of Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang for no other reason than they are Muslim Uyghurs. You know, these people are not terrorists. That is the only reason they're being incarcerated. Um, their attempts to turn Hong Kong into a communist clone of other mainland cities, I should say, not other mainland cities, of mainland cities, thus disregarding the one country, two systems and the joint declaration, their aggression in the South China Sea, their continuing degradation of human rights under Emperor Xi. I firmly believe that the only language bullies understand is force. We need to reject the Huawei deal. We need to get on the side of our Commonwealth allies on this. And I think the world needs to send out a message to Beijing because basically, under arrogant Emperor Xi, this nasty regime thinks it can do whatever it wants. On the 30th anniversary of Tiananmen, they had an opportunity to come clean. Instead of doing so, on the rare occasion when they even admitted anything happened, they justified it. I really feel strongly about this. I really feel that there's a lot of things going on. One of them is the underhand tactics that Beijing uses, getting the Chinese diaspora stoked up to wave their little flags and make excuses for the communist regime. This might sound hard line, and I appreciate not everyone would agree with this, but I really think maybe the time has come where we say to, for example, Chinese students, you're welcome here. We want you to have a good time. You've come to study. You know, have a good time, but you're not here to promote a dictatorship. You're not here to promote communist ideology. Because something that has been happening is the Chinese regime has been stoking up the Chinese diaspora. And the arrogance of this, I'll be totally honest, I find it incredibly disrespectful when I see Chinese nationalists in London or San Francisco or Toronto or Paris thinking that they can, demand that China is respected. What they really mean is the Communist Party is respected. Um, I think we need to say, if you're going to study here, you're a guest, so behave like that. I appreciate it would be difficult to have a situation of saying you cannot make nationalistic displays against this country, but at the very least, we should consider it. I mean, if Brexit's about taking back control, we need to be standing up to the likes of the communist regime in Beijing. I'm realistic. I know that you cannot totally cut off ties with the world's second biggest economy. I don't think that would be sensible and I don't think it's workable. But the way Beijing works is by bully boy tactics, and whenever they don't get their way, they like to play the victim. This is a nasty, dishonest regime, and I really want to see the world standing up to China under communism. I'm not xenophobic. I don't even need to say that. I've said it in other videos. I'm not. Um, But I'll be quite honest, things like this definitely put a gulf between me and my Chinese friends. Not that I've had heated debates with them about it, but I know that even many of my friends, they're a product of their society. They've been brought up under a communist system where their whole lives they've been told that the communist regime is right and everyone else is wrong. Um, so it's really an unfortunate situation. However, there's some optimism from this. These are huge demonstrations, anywhere from 250,000 to a million. As always, there's some debate over the exact numbers. Even if it's a lower figure, bear in mind Hong Kong has about 7.2 million people. So even if it's that lower figure of 250,000, that's a pretty sizable demonstration. I think it's more likely to be over half a million. Carrie Lam is showing herself to be nothing but a stooge for the communist regime. When she got into office, she said she would be a free thinker, that she wouldn't be, a puppet of Beijing. But unfortunately, she's done very little to prove otherwise. Um, and the point about this is it is yet another underhand tactic Beijing is using to try and violate Hong Kong's autonomy. Um, I don't blame Hong Kongers for being furious and concerned about this. But where I do have some optimism is that the spirit of young Hong Kong people, it reminds me of the spirit of young mainland Chinese in 1989. They will never allow this to happen. And the fact they are young, they're the future generation, they know what's happening. I think this is a David and Goliath situation, but I think that there is a spirit in Hong Kong that you don't see on the mainland, and that gives me some optimism. It doesn't mean, though, that the passion of these young people, they're not all young, some of them are older people as well, but the passion that they have against Beijing's bullying tactics, um, that in itself isn't enough. There needs to be support from outside governments. I want the next British Prime Minister to be assertive on this. Unfortunately, we're so tied up with Brexit. Jeremy Hunt did make concerns apparently about the Huawei deal. I think we can send out a message by rejecting that. If we go along with that, it's a message to Beijing that, oh well, we'll make a few muted protests, but we're going to go along with your blood money because essentially that's what it is. Um, I really think that pandering to China at this time is rewarding China. Um, I really think that the world needs to recognize what's going on here because, I mean, what's happening in Xinjiang is the largest mass incarceration of anyone since World War II. That's it's nothing short of that. Um, so I see the spirit of 1989 in these young Hong Kongers and have enormous respect for them and what they're doing. Um, Violence obviously is never good in a demonstration, but actually the violence has been minimal given the number of people who have been involved. Um, As for Carrie Lam's excuse that it's just Hong Kong keeping in with the rest of the world, that won't really convince a lot of people when she has simultaneously basically given Beijing everything at once. She has not stood up to Xi Jinping once in her 4 or 5 years as chief executive. So this is a very critical situation, very critical. Hong Kong is the only place, incidentally, where Tiananmen can still be commemorated. That shows how important Hong Kong is. Um, I've no doubt that Beijing, when, if we spoke out, they'd say, oh, the British should mind their own business. Hong Kong belongs to China now. What about one party, two systems? One country, two systems. They violated that. We have a right to speak out against this, given that they broke a deal that we were also joint signatories to. The Chinese Communist regime are liars. So we need to stand up to them. I really believe that. Um, it won't be easy. It never is. But it's the right thing to do. And any prime minister who stood up to China would have my respect.